Hi, Gail. I'm Jerry. Can I call you Gail? Or?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Gail, I can't write right, so I'm going to need your help on that. I doubt if I'm alone in thinking that I can't write right. I'm sure many of my family and others have intensely interesting stories to pass on to their descendants, but lack the confidence or encouragement to put that onto pen and ink. There are many stories in all our lives that we have been blessed with or burdened with, that are better shared at least with a page under the mattress, if not with friends and loved ones. Better they read it in a book, don't you think, than just hear them on, and this is what Grandpa said. And
well, I'm just going to go back because I love the name of your show and I love this issue about right. What is right? And I'm just going to tell a tiny little story to start. I teach at the Community College of Vermont, and I had a class of basic writing students. And one of the first things I told them is that the correctness of language is subjective, what that means is that if you go to one place, somebody's going to say one thing in answer to a question about what's right, and then you go to someplace else, and I gave the example of ain't. And I said, do you think ain't is a word? How many people think ain't is a word? And nobody raised their hands. I said, of course it is. It's a word because people use it. And do you understand what I mean if I say ain't? They said, yeah. Then it's right. But it's not necessarily correct in the context of academic writing. So people are making decisions about what's right and what's not, depending on where you are.
oh,
So to me, like legitimacy, that's in the eye of the beholder. So yeah, I think you write great.
wow, you're my new best friend. I thought I got off to a really slow start. I know it started out with a knife fight. And
That's how your writing life started out with a knife fight?
No, the book.
Oh, the book, okay.
It started out with a knife fight, and no, my life started out, if I remember rightly, in a snowstorm.
Your writing life?
No, my life.
Oh, your actual life.
Yeah, because January 19th, and I was in Rome, New York, and I came into the world, and my father was running around telling everybody that my mother was all right, the story I got anyway, and so I came to the world anyway, and I've been weird ever since.
But what got you into writing, Jerry? I'm really curious about that.
Squirrels.
Squirrels.
Squirrels. I, for the longest time, said, I wish I had 4 hands like squirrels do. And you notice in my book that I use an orangutan because they're smart, and I love redheads. And all redheads, I don't care. As a matter of fact, there's one right there. And I said, okay, now this was long, long ago. It wasn't anything to do with me writing. I just said, gee, I wish I was a squirrel. Then I got thinking about things, and I said, you know, I wonder if I could write something. I said, I don't know how to write, but I can put something down on paper, and then we can work on it from there. And so I did this. If you notice, there's a lot of pages folded over.
Yep.
When I got done writing, my editor, my love of my life, my redhead, had 4,000 changes to make in it. And then we put it on a binder. One thing about writing when you don't know what you're doing, especially if you have a lot of friends and relatives, it's the world's nicest Christmas present and birthday present, and because
just to give them your book.
Yeah,
okay.
10 books are $200, spiral bound.
That's what you paid to have your
That's what I paid to have it done. And so, how many people do you know that you'd give a $20 present to that they'd love for life? Mm-hmm. They may never read it. Some will, some won't, but it'll always be there. And then maybe the great-great-grandchildren will say, what was that? Oh, your great-grandfather wrote a book, and it's been sitting in the closet ever since. Well, then they might read it. And the book is all about this one guy that decided all human life on Earth is supposed to be extinct someday, just like the dinosaurs. Well, he took that to heart, and he says, okay, how am I going to save humans? And so he took an orangutan and started to add human chromosomes and until they went too far. And that's something like what they look like. They're beautiful humans from the shoulders up, and from there down, sooner or later they become orangutan and they have 4 hands. And then one of them escapes just outside of Burlington at the way station.
Oh yeah, I read that part.
And then it's all chase scenes and in the woods. Of course, orangutans are okay in the woods. And then they try to socialize. And all the time, their goal is to save humanity. And because they're smart and speak well, several languages, because when they start out in childhood, they learn for 16 hours a day because they're not human, so you don't put them in school for a few hours and send them home. You're in a cage someplace, and then you do whatever you want with them because they're not humans. Other people in the world have been considered not humans before, and I took how they were treated and put that in my book as the orangutans being treated that way, because I'm sure that there are humans that would treat them that way. Anyway, so I went on with that, and they started to try to socialize, and there's a lot of little stories and sub-stories and all that about them trying to socialize, and because they were starting to socialize, they needed a religion, so they went to the animal religion.
Oh,
it's just simply please God.
Please God, yeah.
And don't ask God to do anything for you, because He's not gonna, because you got to please Him because you're an animal. And so that's their religion, and that's in the book too, and all sorts of weird stuff. And if anybody is crazy enough to read it, I hope they enjoy it. But I know you skimmed through it. It was I don't think I can write right. I think there's some things I could improve upon. I know I have a very vivid imagination. But what would a person, like for example, my family's got a lot of barbers. Now I know in my heart, almost any barber I've ever met could write a book of jokes. And it could be, but how would somebody start to write? Somebody that hasn't ever written before, what should they be thinking about when they write?
Well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, a writer is a person who writes, and for me, it's a choice. It's a way of being in the world. And my writing started when I was a child. I was a very quiet, shy child in many ways.
We fixed that for you, right?
Yes, no, that definitely changed. But part of it was when written language started, I could have access to that. I knew how to write, I knew how to read. I started being able to express myself in a really different way than I could, because often in an interaction I would get kind of caught up in what was happening and listening to other people and what the emotional dynamics going back and forth. But when I was by myself, I could think about what I wanted to say and imagine if I was writing something that was fiction. I wrote lots and lots of letters. I wrote with my best friend Debbie Hicks. We wrote lots of plays. We had a time machine in one, and we did a parade that was a play from people who were from another planet, celebrating the planet's anniversary, and we just did lots of really fun. We did puppet shows, and it was really a big part of my childhood, was being creative, especially with writing. And something that was very interesting, there was a difficult time in my family, and my parents sent me to a therapist. And I was so angry about this that I would go into the therapist's office and I would take he had a chalkboard easel, one of those sort of big triangle. And the first thing I always did is I would take the easel and I would put it down between me and him so I didn't have to look at him. And then one day on the easel was already there, and there was some index cards and a couple of crayons. So I started writing him notes, and I would pass him the notes behind the easel or in front of the easel or on top of the easel, and it changed the whole nature of that interaction. And so was I writing right? I was writing right for me. If people have a desire to write, another example is letters and emails, especially now, but I used to write letters to my best friend, long letters, kind of with lots of descriptions and feelings, and they were very literary, and her also. She was a wonderful writer, and it was really a big part of our friendship to have the letters going back and forth. was that right? It was for us. And this, you know, it's all about your audience. If your audience understands what you're saying, if your audience is taking the communication, getting it, and then able to respond to it in a way with their own expression, that's right in my mind.
Oh.
So, you know, I mean, you say, okay, well, right, you know, if you want to be a professional, I don't know, copywriter, which is something that I do, well, yes, there's a whole bunch of rules. There's the style guides, the Chicago Manual of Style, the APA guide, you know, they tell you exactly how to do where to put the commas and what to capitalize, what to italicize. That's for one specific context, which is copywriting, which is business writing. So you have to know the rules of wherever you are. But I think there's lots and lots and lots of writing worlds around.
Yeah, but yeah, I see what you mean. If you're writing for your own entertainment and pleasure, and the reason I started this particular program was there's one lady, I'm in a writers group, and I just went there because I thought it would be interesting, and she was always listening to everybody. She wasn't writing anything. I asked her why, and she said, well, because I don't want a bunch of strangers criticizing my work. I says, we won't criticize your work, and we aren't strangers, we're friends, we're family. She started writing. She wrote the 3 most beautiful things I'd ever heard. One was her version of My Secret Garden, and there's a couple other things she wrote about in her life that it seemed once she got that on paper and out of her mind that her personality changed.
Yeah.
And I got thinking about all these people with PDA and all that, that if they just wrote it down and that's under the mattress sort of a thing, just tuck it under the mattress, it's getting it out of your mind so that you don't have to think about it anymore. Or
and when you get it out of your mind, it becomes something else, and I think it becomes something really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's not just some swirling idea that you're not sharing. It's going into the world, and you've made something. You've made an expression that can be of value to someone else. There's been in the last 10, 15 years, there's been a big resurgence of creative nonfiction writing, which is taking your own experiences. It's a lot of my work is in that category. And you write your experience, but in a very literary way. And that's changed people's lives. Lots and lots of different ways. I mean, I've done some writing about, I lost a child when I was...
oh, sorry to hear
that's
that.
okay. I had a twin pregnancy, and I wrote about that. And that story, I'm still getting feedback from people saying, I had that experience. It was so comforting. In fact, it was this book that piece was published in.
Oh.
How to Expect What You're Not Expecting, Stories of Pregnancy, Parenthood, and Loss. And my story, which was called Loving Benjamin, was in that anthology. And all of these stories are by writers. I mean, it's creative nonfiction. It's about their experience, but the way that it's written, it really, instead of leaving people in a very dark place, it leaves people in an optimistic place, which is a strange thing to come away from in a book that has stories of pregnancy, parenthood, and loss. But it's through the connection. Writing is a great connector. If I know that somebody is out there in the world having the same experience as me, I feel comforted by that, and I feel enriched by that. So that's a big reason that I write, is for that connection and for the social contact.
So you don't have to have this, like you say, a lot of those corrections were commas. You know, and,
oh, the commas.
So, yeah, this panda thing that you got, I wake up sometimes when I'm in this little sleep, and I say, oh yeah, panda eats, shoots, and leaves.
Yeah.
And that's all about commas. I definitely
it's about
all about
punctuation,
commas.
but she's really like, it's a woman who, she calls herself a stickler. That's somebody who's knows the grammatical rules. She's British, but she knows them. She is upset when she doesn't see them in public print, signs, ads, whatever. And so she wrote a book about it's the history of punctuation and the rules. But it's very funny. It's written very tongue-in-cheek. It's a great book for people who are interested in the subject of punctuation, not necessarily to improve your writing, although it could do that too, but it's really, really funny. And there's some interesting information about the development of language and the development of what's correct. So
Yeah,
I would recommend that for sure.
I remember the first time you said it, I pictured a panda in a bar shooting a gun in the air, and then you said, move the comma over, what do you get? Okay, they got the panda eats bamboo, shoots, and leaves.
Yeah.
And he doesn't go into a restaurant, eat bamboo, and shoots a gun in the air, and then leaves.
Yeah.
He, and it's all for one little teeny comma.
Yeah.
But if you're writing for yourself, and I recommend writing for your grandchildren. My mother was 99 when she passed away, and my daughter started writing stories that she had, and then she still got them on disc, but these are personal little family things. I had a uncle, Francis, who was in intelligence in World War II, and he liberated a couple of death camps. And he had his own personal pictures he took just so that nobody could say this is government stuff.
Wow.
And they got burned. That's another story. But anyway, somebody in the family talked to him and started writing some of this stuff down. Oh. And great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren are the ones, if you're writing something that you find interesting that you don't think your kids might, I've got a bunch of stories like, I don't even want to talk about it. But the great-grandchildren will just love them. And they need to be on paper and tucked someplace so that the great-grandchildren can enjoy them. Mm-hmm. And if you never write anything else, never want it to get published, like you say, you tuck it under the mattress, find it someday, and that's the sort of thing I'd like to see more people do. Just, okay, write stuff.
It really enriches society. It enriches the people involved, but then it also enriches people around them, because let's say you're doing something like that and a friend of yours hears about that. Well, I think that friend is going to feel a little bit more allowed to do the same thing if people around him are also writing. Oh. So I think the inspiration can come in a really, really simple and subtle way. And I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned about your writing group. And I think writing groups can be a phenomenal help, but they're not all the same. And I think when you form a writing group, like I'm part of a writing group, I'm part of a couple writing groups, but my favorite writing group is the Boring Writers Society. And we call ourselves the Boring Writers Society because this particular group, we just get together in a cafe in Montreal and we do our work together. Occasionally we'll talk, but it's not a critique group. It's just a group to get together and encourage each other and to work side by side.
Yeah, the group that I'm in is not a critique group. You have to just about beg them if you want something critiqued, and they'll still be nice.
Do that. And then there's also the issue of getting feedback, and oftentimes people are afraid of getting feedback. But that's a really open-ended question. And I trained with a woman named Liz Lerman. She's a dancer choreographer in the States. And she developed something called the critical response process. And it's a real structured way of moving through a critique, but it's designed to support the artist and to help the artist make better work. So you hear all these nightmares about writing school and professors tearing the students down and how harsh criticism, and it doesn't have to be that way. Like one of the structures in this particular process is the artist asks the questions about the work. So you wrote a book. I'm sure you have questions of things that you're not sure about. Is this working? I'm not sure. So you would come to this process and you would ask however many questions you want. The scene where the little bear comes, was that clear? And then the people who are in the critique group respond. So the artist or the person that's in the writing, that person gets to get the feedback that they want or need. And it's all in a positive way. Even if something's critical, it's done to help the person make better work. So I just wanted to say that because a lot of people, you can make your own rules. you can have the person that's doing the writing ask the questions, and that can be the critique.
Yeah, we're not out of time, but we're running into the last 10 minutes or so.
Wow, that was fast.
It just seemed to fly by. I think we could talk for hours. Is there anything that you want to impress the people with on the other end of the camera?
Well, I do want to say the business that I'm in right now, I'm very excited because when my son, I have a 5-year-old son, when he was born, I started freelancing both as a journalist and a copywriter. So I also do, well, I do editing, but I also do coaching with writing. And I'm developing a couple of online classes for, the first is going to be just for people who want to improve their writing. And the second is going to be for people who are non-English speakers who want to learn to write better.
So you're bilingual, aren't you?
I'm sort of bilingual, but this is really, it's going to be for people who are advanced in English enough so that they can write something. But I do coaching, I do editing, I do writing for brochures, websites, all kinds of business writing, and my business is called Gail Writes, and the website is gailwrites.net. So please feel free to contact me.
I know I tried to write you an email, and I used .com instead of .ca.
.net, actually it's
.net?
Gail at gailwrites.net.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. And so anyway, then I said, oh yeah, that's something to think about. The writing emails and all that is international, worldwide now. It's not just.
I have clients everywhere. I have clients in the UK, and I always have to think about, okay, 5 hours ahead. Are they sleeping? Are they not? Or what are the work hours that overlap? But it's really fun, actually, to work with people that are living in a different culture, and it's interesting.
So can we say that as far as you're concerned, if you want to write, just grab a piece of paper and a pen or anything and just write. Yeah,
a piece of paper and a pencil. Yeah, or write on the computer. I have a couple of friends that we write we write longer and more descriptive emails, and that's part of our writing practice every day because you have an audience. You know, it's not just you. Yeah. On the other hand, if you prefer to be solitary, that's fun too, and you can take all kinds of notes. You can do an automatic writing where you set the timer and you're not going to let the pen off the page for 2 minutes. Even if you're writing, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to say, something's going to occur to you, oh, there's a bird, and wow, those bright lights, fluorescent, what does fluorescent mean? You're just following your stream of consciousness. And you can go back later, and if there's interesting stuff in your automatic writing, you can use it.
Yeah, I know sports people, and like somebody said, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. Yeah. It's the same thing with your mind. The more you use it, I started thinking, what in the world can I do because I'm ancient beyond belief? And
it's in the eyes of the beholder.
Yeah, and I said, well, I was using one side of my brain as an accountant all my life, so let's try the other side of my brain. And then I just started, okay, what can I do? Play checkers, chess, write, anything I can think of to stir up the other side of my mind. Yeah. And I found that this is stuck in there someplace hiding. And
well, and I think when you learn to write, when you're a better writer, you're a better thinker, because everything becomes more precise. You can say, you have a choice. Okay, he drank a glass of water. Well, he swilled a glass of water. He sipped on a glass of water. Like, what exactly did he do? And you start thinking and understanding things more precisely.
Yeah, and was there a little trickle of water running down? You know.
Yeah.
Squirrels are the same way. I got squirrels around the house, and I love squirrels. One, I saw this bush moving across the wires, and behind this great big clump was getting ready for a nest. All these little twigs with leaves on them, and behind that was a squirrel taking them across. And before I started writing, I wouldn't think I'd see, oh yeah, there's a squirrel with some leaves, and it was fascinating. I mean, instead of just seeing a squirrel do that, once I started writing, before I even tried a book, the whole world opened up that this is a wonderful, entertaining thing to watch this squirrel. And then sometimes they'll go upside down along a wire, and you know, this squirrel is smart enough not to run across the road. He's not going to be a flat squirrel. He's going to be a tree climber, and your mind, your whole world just opens up. And even if nobody ever reads it, like I say, if it's an under the mattress thing, fine. At least you've got your, and like sportsmen, you throw a football, okay, if you threw it once, no, you throw it and then you miss and throw it and you miss and throw it and you miss. Sooner or later you start hitting more often.
Yeah.
And
you become more engaged with the world. That's what I love.
Yes.
And it's a conversation. It's a conversation between you and yourself, but also between you and the world, you and the squirrel. The squirrel did something and then you wrote in response to the squirrel. That's a conversation.
It is. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it is, yeah. And even if it's only in your mind and not on paper, but it's better off on paper.
Much better on paper. Become something else.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then years later, the writings on the cave walls were some guy was teaching his children how to hunt. He took a stick and wrote it. Then, this sounds like we got about 1 minute left. So,
can I just say one thing quick?
You can.
I do have a bunch of resources. I don't have time to share them, but there's wonderful links and wonderful resources on the internet for people who are looking just to start writing. If you want to email me at gail@gailwrites.net, I can send you those links. There's general resources for writing goals, motivation, there's writing groups, there's literary journals, there's all kinds of things that you probably would never know are out there unless you look. So I'm happy to share those links with the viewers.
Well, that's wonderful. Gail, thank you for your assistance. And it's strange how fast time flies when you're having fun. Especially when I'm talking to somebody as interesting as you are. I mean, we've taught before, and I always sit there and, oh yeah, wow. On a personal note, I hope you get to come to the show again.
Sure.
Would that be okay?
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to.
And do you know anybody else that might want? Just let me know.
Yeah,
sure. Not necessarily right now, but
I have some good ideas for you.
And then please join me again while I try to solve the mystery of why I can't write right. Thanks, Gail, as well as all of you out there for watching the show. Maybe you know somebody who's willing to come on to the show. I talked to somebody the other day, and you were talking about the person. This person had you don't know the person or the book, but she had a problem, and she wrote about it, and I went on her website and looked at it, and it's just a fascinating thing doing this show, but we need people like you to say, oh yeah, I know, so I'll come in and talk on TV. It's half an hour goes really fast. It took you longer to get through the border than it did the show. So okay, we're winding it out now, and thanks again. And
thanks, Jerry. I like being here.
Well, you take care now, and thank you for watching.